For this week's e-learning, I'm going to review for you some slope of a line and graphing lines, and then you will have a Canvas assignment to practice these things. Please make sure that you are continuing to try all of the Canvas quizzes and keep up with your work, as your grade for this semester will be impacted by how much effort you put into actually working on some of this e-learning. Okay. Of course, your quarter 3 grade that we did at school will also have a high impact on your grade. So if you had done well in the 3rd quarter, then you're pretty well set up as long as you keep working on your e-learning. If you didn't have a good grade in 3rd quarter, then make sure you are working on your e-learning, because this can help your grade go up. Okay, so from this lesson, I hope that you are able to determine slope from a graph and from 2 points and from an equation, and then also be able to graph lines. Okay, so if you take a look at these 3 lines, remember that slope is the steepness of a line. So the question would be, which one has a steeper slope? And here, if we put these here and have them roll down, the steeper one, that ball should reach the ground first. So the steepest one there is the yellow, then the blue, and then the green is the least steep. It's very gradual. Okay, so slope is the steepness and the direction of a line. Remember that we refer to it as rise over run. And so on a graph, or if you have a line, you're calculating that rise in the upward or downward direction, and then that run in the left or right direction. And we usually write that as a fraction of rise over run, or the vertical change over the horizontal change. So just kind of reviewing this here with you, taking a look so that kind of refresh your memory for your Canvas quiz. But if I have this line and I say that it rises 18 inches and it runs 12 inches, then I can set up that slope fraction of 18 over 12, that rise in the upward direction, the 12 in the right direction, so 8 over 12, and I simplify that by dividing by 6 on both of those numbers, and I get 3 over 2. So the slope is 3/2, and it is going upward, so it's positive. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about then, that there are 4 types of slope. Okay, negative, positive, 0, and undefined. Okay, negative means that it is going downward. It's going down to the right. Okay, positive means it is going upward. It is going up to the right. 0 slope is a horizontal line, like a flat road, or, you know, in the classroom, the floor for the classroom. And then that undefined slope is a vertical line. So like the walls in our classroom, though, they would have undefined slope. Okay, so just a quick review here. I'm going to draw some lines just to kind of remind you of that. They don't always have to be, you know, going over all 4 quadrants here, but remember, positive slope would be going up to the right. Negative slope would be going down to the right. 0 slope would be that flat line, and then the undefined would be that straight up and down line. Okay. So we want to know how to calculate slope from 2 points, and you should recognize this formula here, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You learned that first semester in your algebra class, and you will be seeing that again as you continue with Algebra 1 and then go on to other math classes. So since the slope is the rise over run, we subtract the y's, which would be the rise. The up and down is the y-axis on the graph on the top, and then our x's are on the bottom. That's that left to right, which the x-axis runs left to right. Okay, so just going to show you some examples here for how to do this, so that when you have to do it on your quiz, you can do this. So again, I want to use this formula here. I'm going to label, this would be x1 and y1. This would be x2 and y2. So this is point number 1, this is point number 2. Okay, and then I'm just going to fill in the numbers that I labeled for the correct things into this equation up here. So m equals, my equation says y2. Well, I labeled 17 as that. So 17 minus y1 was 19, all over x2, which I said was negative 9, and then minus x1, so minus 11. And now I'm going to calculate that. So 17 minus 19 is negative 2, and negative 9 minus 11 is negative 20. So then to simplify that, negative and negative cancel out. 2 negatives make a positive, and then 2 and 20, I can divide both of them by 2. So I get 1 over 10. So the slope of the line between those 2 points is 1/10. Okay. Looking at number 2 here, they have 4 different ordered pairs for us. We don't have to use all of them. We only need 2 points. Okay, so I'm going to select, it doesn't really matter which ones you select, but I like to use small numbers and I like to keep them positive. So I'm going to use 3, 1, so x1 and y1, and then 6, 3, so x2 and y2. And again, I'm just going to plug them into that formula. So m equals y2 was 3, minus y1 was 1, and then over x2 I said was 6, minus x1 is 3. So 3 minus 1 is 2, and then 6 minus 3 is 3. So the slope, and that can't be simplified, the slope between those 2 points is 2/3. Okay, you might want to pause the video now and see if you can do this yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and go through this pretty quickly since I kind of already explained it on the other slide. But again, I want to use this equation and I want to label my ordered pairs. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So again, this is point 1, point 2, and that's the x, that's the y, that's the x, that's the y. So my slope is y2, which I said was 6, minus y1, which is 6, x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is negative 1. Okay, so I get 0 over minus a negative is really adding the opposite, so that's over 4. 0 divided by 4 is 0. So that's that flat line. It has 0 slope. Okay, over here on number 4 then, again, I'm going to label my points. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So filling in that formula, y2 is 7, minus y1 is negative 5. All over x2 is 2, minus x1 is 2. So if I simplify that, minus a negative is adding. So I get 12 over 0, which 12 divided by 0, if you do that in a calculator, is, it'll say it's an error. So the slope here is, you would write equals undefined. That's that straight up and down line. So this is what happens in your math work if you have the 0 slope and the undefined. Okay. All right, moving on to a graph then. Again, here we're just calculating the rise and the run and writing that fraction. So here I'm going to start with my first point on the left. My rise, it looks like I have to go down 2, so that's negative 2. If you go down, it's negative. And then to get to my other point over here, I have to go right 5. Okay, so that was positive 5. I went to the right, so that was the positive direction. So my fraction then, my slope is negative 2/5. Okay. Looking at number 2 here, I have my 2 points. So from the left point, I have to go up 1, so that's positive 1, and then I go right 1, which is positive 1. So my slope is 1 over 1, which is just 1. Looking at a few more here, I have my 2 points here. So to get from one point to the other, my rise here is negative 3. Okay, so that went down 3, so negative 3 over, and then we didn't go over any, so that's 0. And remember, that is that undefined slope. So that slope was undefined on number 3. Number 4, again, I have my 2 points. I'm going to go up 2, so that's positive 2, and then I go right 1, which is 1. So my slope here is 2 over 1, which simplifies just to 2. So the slope of that line is positive 2. All right, looking at an equation. Okay, so remember here, y equals mx plus b, very popular formula for linear equations. X and y representing an ordered pair on a graph. M standing for the slope and that B standing for the y-intercept. So we just want to pick out the slope here, so we're making sure it's in that format. Notice that it is the number with the x. So on number 1 here, y equals 3x plus 9, that 3 is with the x, so my slope is 3. On number 2, y equals 7 plus 1/2 x. They switch the order here. My 1/2 is with the x, so my slope is 1/2. Okay, number 3, notice that it is not in that y equals mx plus b format. So I need to solve for y here. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I get 2y equals negative 4x plus 8. Divide everything by 2. I get y equals negative 2x plus 4. So there, that number with the x is negative 2. So the slope of my line here is negative 2. And number 4, x equals 7. That's not in that format either, which means it is a special case. So if I remember, x goes up and down. If I plot that, so that right there is undefined. So my slope for number 4, I would write out is undefined. Okay, all right, so going back to that, y equals mx plus b, we need to know how to graph from that. So remember, the slope is with the x, and then that number that is by itself is the y-intercept. So we plot that on the y-axis. So for example, on number 1, it says y equals 7 over 5x minus 2. Well, my y-intercept is negative 2, so I'm going to plot that here. And then my slope is 7/2, so I have to go up 7, or not 7/2, sorry, 7/5, up 7 and over 5, and I can put that other dot. So then I can draw my line. So there is the line of that equation. Okay, looking at another one here, y equals negative 1/2 x. Well, I notice that there's not a number right here, and the number that means nothing is 0, so the y-intercept is 0 here. Okay, and then my slope is negative 1/2, so I have to go down 1 and right 2 to get to my next point. Because it's a small slope, I'm going to do that again, so down 1, right 2, another dot there. So there is the line of that graph, or the graph of that line, sorry. Okay, looking at number 3 here, y equals 3. Again, a special case. There's no slope because there's no x term, so that means the y-intercept here is 3, and there's no slope, so it's just going left to right. So there is y equals 3. Okay, and my last one here, my y-intercept is 2, so I'm going to put a dot on the y-axis at 2, and then there's no number here, but remember it is 1, so the slope is negative 1. And then to make that a fraction, over 1. So down 1, over 1, put a dot. Down 1, over 1, put a dot. Down 1, over 1, put a dot. So there is the graph of that line. Oops, there's one more here. Maybe there's a couple more to show you some special cases here, but x equals 2 is that special case. So I go to the x-axis this time at 2. And then I just go up and down because there's nothing to do. There's nothing else given in that equation. So these things are just a quick review. You should have learned them first semester, but these are the things that I'm asking you to answer questions about on the Canvas quiz. So please make sure that you ask for help through email. If you need anything, I can Zoom with you, or I can conference through Canvas. But these are the things then that the questions on Canvas, the 10 questions, are based upon. Some of them are short answer, some of them are multiple choice. Reach out for help if you need it. Have a great day.